When talking about Bonanza, one cannot forget the image of Hoss Cartwright, the loyal, strong, yet deeply compassionate son of the Cartwright family. However, there is one episode so heartbreaking that many fans find it too painful to watch, as it marks the final appearance of Dan Blocker, the actor who brought Hoss to life. This episode not only signaled the end of a beloved character, but also became a turning point that changed Bonanza forever. What happened? Why do viewers struggle to hold back tears when watching Dan Blocker's last episode? Dan Blocker, the man as solid as a mountain. Born in 1928, Dan Blocker was a man of impressive stature and presence. Standing at 6 feet 3 inches with a powerful build, he was the perfect choice to bring Hoss Cartwright, the kind-hearted, gentle giant of the Cartwright family, to life in Bonanza. However, his success wasn't just due to his physical appearance. Dan was a deeply talented actor with a natural ability to convey emotion, making Hoss one of the most beloved characters in television history. Dan Blocker's journey to fame was anything but ordinary. Before stepping into the world of Hollywood, he had a diverse background that set him apart from many of his contemporaries. He served in the Korean War, worked as a teacher, and even dabbled in business before finally pursuing his passion for acting. His rugged yet warm persona quickly caught the attention of casting directors, and he began securing small roles in various television shows. His breakthrough came in 1959 when he was cast as Hoss Cartwright in Bonanza, a Western drama that would go on to become one of the longest-running and most successful TV series of all time. From the moment he appeared on screen, Dan captivated audiences with his portrayal of Hoss, a man whose imposing size was contrasted by his gentle heart and unwavering loyalty to his family. Unlike the stereotypical rough-and-tough cowboys of the era, Hoss was defined by his kindness, humor, and sense of justice. For over a decade, Bonanza dominated American television, and Dan Blocker became a household name. His chemistry with co-stars Lorne Greene, Michael Landon, and Pernell Roberts helped create one of the most memorable TV families of all time. While the show was filled with action, adventure, and drama, Hoss Cartwright provided a unique charm. His innocence and good nature made him a character that viewers couldn't help but love. Hoss was more than just comic relief or a secondary character. He was the heart of the show. Whether it was defending the weak, helping a stranger, or bringing warmth to his family, Hoss embodied the values that Bonanza sought to represent. Dan's performance was so authentic that many fans saw him as Hoss both on and off the screen. His portrayal resonated deeply with audiences, making him one of the most beloved figures in television history. The fateful surgery. The tragic death of Dan Blocker. In 1972, as Bonanza prepared to enter its 14th season, Dan Blocker checked into the hospital for what was supposed to be a routine gallbladder surgery. It was a standard medical procedure, and there was no reason for concern. The cast and crew of Bonanza, as well as Dan's family and friends, fully expected him to make a swift recovery and return to work. No one could have imagined that this seemingly simple operation would take a devastating turn. Fate, however, had other plans, ones that were as cruel as they were unexpected. After the surgery, Dan initially seemed to be recovering well, but soon complications arose. He developed multiple blood clots in his lungs, leading to a pulmonary embolism, a serious and often fatal condition where blood clots block the arteries in the lungs. This sudden turn of events proved catastrophic, and despite doctors' efforts, Dan Blocker passed away on May 13, 1972, at just 43 years old. The news of his death sent shockwaves through Hollywood and devastated millions of fans around the world. A man who had been larger than life, both physically and in spirit, was gone in the blink of an eye. His passing left an unfillable void, not only for his family and co-stars, but also for the millions of viewers who had come to love him as the warm-hearted Hoss Cartwright. Dan Blocker was not just a beloved actor, he was also a devoted husband and father. He left behind his wife, Dolphia Parker, and their 4 children, including Dirk Blocker, who would later follow in his father's footsteps and become an actor. The loss of Dan was devastating for his family, who had to navigate life without the loving and protective presence that had always been at the heart of their home. His Bonanza co-stars, particularly Michael Landon and Lorne Greene, were deeply affected by his sudden passing. Michael Landon, who had worked closely with Dan for over a decade, struggled to process the loss of his on-screen brother and real-life friend. It was Landon who ultimately had to decide how Bonanza would handle the absence of Hoss Cartwright, one of the most beloved characters in television history. Unlike many other TV shows of the time, which would often replace or simply ignore the loss of a major character, Bonanza took the unprecedented step of acknowledging Dan Blocker's death in the storyline. Instead of recasting the role or writing Hoss out with a vague explanation, the series left his absence unexplained, but deeply felt. The 14th season of Bonanza opened without Hoss, and though the show attempted to move forward, the energy and heart of the series were never the same. Michael Landon later admitted that the decision to continue without Dan was an incredibly difficult one. The cast tried to maintain a sense of normalcy, but the weight of Hoss's absence was undeniable. Many fans found it painful to watch Bonanza without one of its most cherished characters, and just a year later, the show came to an end. Even though his life was cut tragically short, Dan Blocker's legacy continues to live on. His portrayal of Hoss Cartwright remains one of the most iconic roles in television history. Decades after his passing, reruns of Bonanza still introduce new generations to the gentle giant whose kindness, humor, and unwavering sense of justice made him a fan favorite. Beyond his on-screen contributions, Dan Blocker is remembered for his humility, generosity, and unwavering dedication to his craft. He was a man who never let fame change him, remaining true to his values and always putting his family first. Dan Blocker's untimely death was a heartbreaking loss, but his spirit endures in the hearts of those who loved him, both on screen and in real life. Though Bonanza could never be the same without him, his legacy as Hoss Cartwright and as a truly remarkable human being remains immortal. The cast and crew's heartbreaking collapse. When the Bonanza cast and crew received the devastating news of Dan Blocker's passing, it felt as though the entire show had crumbled. Lorne Greene, who played Ben Cartwright, the patriarch of the Cartwright family, was in complete disbelief. How could a man as strong and full of life as Dan Blocker be taken away by something as seemingly routine as a surgical complication? For Michael Landon, who portrayed Little Joe, Dan's death was more than just the loss of a co-star. It was the loss of a real-life brother. The two had formed an incredibly close bond over the years, and Dan's absence left Michael shattered. He later admitted that filming Bonanza without Dan felt unnatural, as if a core piece of the show was missing. But grief wasn't the only challenge the cast and crew faced. They had to answer a difficult question. How could Bonanza continue without Hoss Cartwright? At the time, television shows typically handled an actor's departure in a simple way. If an actor left, their character would often be sent away on an extended trip or quietly written out without much explanation. But this situation was different. Dan Blocker wasn't just leaving the show. He was gone forever, and audiences knew it. The writers couldn't just make Hoss disappear without an explanation. Michael Landon, who by then had taken on the role of writer and director for Bonanza, made a groundbreaking decision. Hoss Cartwright would die. This was an incredibly bold move, as it was the first time in American television history that a major character was killed off due to the real-life death of the actor who portrayed them. However, the way Bonanza addressed Hoss's absence was unconventional. Instead of dedicating an emotional farewell episode to the beloved character, the show subtly acknowledged his death without directly showing it on screen. In the first episode of Bonanza's 14th season, there was no dramatic farewell scene, no emotional send-off, and no funeral for Hoss. Instead, the show included a single, subtle line spoken by another character, confirming that Hoss was gone. The lack of an explicit explanation made his absence feel even more painful for both the characters and the audience. Viewers who had grown to love Hoss Cartwright were left with a deep sense of loss. Some expected the show to offer closure by exploring the emotional impact of his passing, but Bonanza instead chose to keep the pain subdued, mirroring the real-life grief that the cast and crew were experiencing. Without Dan Blocker, Bonanza was never the same. The show struggled to regain its footing, and the 14th season ended up being its last. Though the series tried to move forward, the heart of the show had been lost, along with Dan Blocker, Michael Landon, and the immense pressure. As one of the most influential figures on Bonanza, Michael Landon didn't just lose a close friend and co-star when Dan Blocker passed away. He also inherited the heavy responsibility of keeping the show alive without Hoss Cartwright. It was a nearly impossible task. Landon knew that Bonanza couldn't simply continue as if nothing had happened. Hoss was an irreplaceable part of the Cartwright family, both on-screen and off. However, with the show still under contract for another season, he had to find a way to move forward. To compensate for Hoss's absence, Michael Landon and the writing team made several adjustments. One major change was shifting more focus onto Landon's character, Little Joe, giving him a more central role in the series' final season. By expanding Little Joe's storyline, the show hoped to fill the massive void left by Hoss. In addition to this, the writers introduced a new character, Griff King, played by Tim Matheson. Griff was a young man with a troubled past whom the Cartwrights took in, mirroring Bonanza's long-running theme of family and redemption. While Griff brought a fresh dynamic to the show, he was never meant to replace Hoss. The bond between the Cartwright brothers had been at the heart of Bonanza for over a decade, and no new character could replicate that chemistry. During the filming of the 14th season, Michael Landon took a moment to address the cast and crew, delivering a heartfelt speech in honor of Dan Blocker. It was a difficult moment for him. Dan had been more than just a co-star. He was a brother, a friend, and an irreplaceable presence on set. As Landon spoke, he became visibly emotional, struggling to hold back tears. Despite his grief, he tried to maintain a sense of optimism, knowing that the show had to go on. His speech wasn't just a tribute to Dan, it was also a way of encouraging the cast and crew to push forward, even in the face of such a devastating loss. However, everyone on set knew the truth. Bonanza would never be the same. No matter how hard they tried to move forward, the absence of Dan Blocker cast a long shadow over the show. The chemistry that had made Bonanza one of the most beloved westerns of all time had been shattered, and even the most dedicated fans could feel the difference. In the end, Bonanza's 14th season would be its last. Michael Landon did everything he could to honor Dan's legacy and keep the show going, but without Hoss Cartwright, Bonanza had lost its heart. The collapse of Bonanza. Even though Bonanza made the bold decision to acknowledge Hoss's death on screen, it wasn't enough to save the show. Fans simply couldn't accept the reality that Hoss Cartwright was gone. His absence left an irreplaceable void, and the heart of the series was lost. As a result, the ratings for season 14 plummeted. Without Dan Blocker's presence, the show struggled to maintain the same emotional depth and chemistry that had made it a household favorite for over a decade. Eventually, the inevitable happened. Bonanza was canceled after its 14th season. Years later, in 1988, a special made-for-TV movie titled Bonanza: The Next Generation was released. For the first time, the series provided an official explanation for Hoss Cartwright's fate. It was revealed that Hoss had died while heroically saving a woman from drowning. This storyline served as a tribute to Dan Blocker, ensuring that his character remained a hero even after he was no longer on screen. Through this touching acknowledgement, the legacy of Dan Blocker and Hoss Cartwright continued to live on in the hearts of fans, proving that some characters, and the actors who portray them, are truly unforgettable. More than 50 years have passed since Dan Blocker's death. Yet the image of Hoss Cartwright continues to live on in the hearts of fans. Bonanza may have ended, but Dan's legacy remains intact. Dan Blocker's final episode on Bonanza stands as one of the most heartbreaking moments in television history. It wasn't just about the sudden departure of a beloved character. It marked the end of an era. That's why many Bonanza fans still find it difficult to re-watch this episode without feeling an overwhelming sense of sorrow. Did you know about Dan Blocker's unexpected passing and how Bonanza handled his absence? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe for more captivating stories.